Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the session introduction for Chapter 8. Again, the AI images generated. This is the most famous one. If you think of Solomon, you think of him making the wise decision between the two women who were fighting over a child. This is the pinnacle of his wisdom as demonstrated as he was the judge over this decision. Which mother, what should we do with this child that is being fought over by the mothers? And of course, his insight was to say, let's cut the child in half. And one woman quickly agreed, and one woman in horror recoiled and said, absolutely not. And of course, he knew that was the real mother. So that's the wisdom that we can aspire to. Chapter 8 talks about injustice and how we need to trust God. It starts off with a reference that we read a couple of times in scriptures about authority and how earthly authority should be respected. I've got a special slide on that specifically because at times it's really hard to do that. As we know, life can appear unfair, and judgment delayed is judgment denied. We're going to read about that in Solomon's thinking and this word exercise tonight as well. And he talks about just how God's wisdom always is going to exceed ours. If we look at the first chapter, oops, sorry about that. If we go to the first chapter, first couple of verses. Um, he says he believes he could spot a wise person that because they have a pleasant face, and essentially saying, when you are able to understand and see the repercussions of what's going on, your outward constitution is going to reflect that inner peace that you have, and it often shows up on our faces. He talks about how important it is to exercise good judgment and discernment, and in fact, you have to have the right timing to take any actions. So he gives us a lot of recommendations, just like Proverbs. He talks about as an analogy, no one can escape death because just like a private in the army is ordered around by powers above him, we are ordered around by powers above us. And that power, the greatest power in his thinking in this discussion is death. It is the leveler. It takes rich people, poor people, everybody, and treats them the same. We still, however, have power over people's lives. But it's that first point about authority and how we are to be obeying authority. And that reminds me of, obey, which was, it almost sounds like pig Latin. We're talking about obey. It's not something that's part of our language today, but there are two references in Bible commands. One from Romans that says, let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there's no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. So you're essentially fighting God if you rebel against governing authorities. The second is from First Peter, submit yourselves to the Lord's sake to every human authority, whether to the emperor as the supreme authority. And we hear that, and depending on your political affiliations or what country you're living in, you can look at a leader and say, but this is outrageous. This person is not a good leader. Are there any exceptions? And the Bible gives us plenty of examples where the governing authorities were not honored by their word. And the first one comes up with Moses and the midwives. The midwives were ordered to kill all children 2 years and under, and of course didn't do that. They disobeyed the authority, and Moses was allowed to live. Finally, Moses, as he grew up, he went to Pharaoh and was asking, "Let my people go." And Pharaoh said no, and he argued and disregarded the direction from Pharaoh, which was to go away, leave him alone. Joshua, we learned the story of Rahab who hides spies, and in Daniel, of course, uh, the three young gentlemen who grew up under the um, Babylonian Empire were told to bow before a statue, to eat certain foods, and they rebelled, but they did so very congenially. They didn't fight. They argued articulately, and they got their way. Even into the New Testament, we hear of Peter being told to stop preaching, and he said, "Hey, I'm going to listen to what God tells me," and he continues preaching. And in fact, he broke with long-standing Jewish tradition by entering the house of Gentiles and dining. So it's not always wrong to disregard what the existing authority tells us. There are situations like paying taxes, obeying laws, respecting rulers, all those we have support for. But if we're ordered to worship idols or stop praying or stop preaching about Christ, or we're ordered to kill an innocent person, the answer to all those is supported in the Bible with no. And it kind of boils down to when human authority commands that what God forbids or forbids what God commands, we as believers have to obey God rather than man. So let's take with a measured grain of salt when we're told to respect all human authority. We know that again, if it's counteracting God, we're allowed to disobey. We go on to verses 10 to 13. He talks about delays in justice. He makes the observation, again, as he has a number of times, that the wicked seem to prosper. And oftentimes people admire them for their prosperity and how wrong-headed that is. He also talks about how if you are slow to deliver justice, that can breed contempt for the law. If it's like, hey, we've waited long enough for you to right this wrong, we're now going to rebel as well. So it can cause resentment and insurrection. He cautions that God is the one who sees all and will be patient to render justice in the end. And it's often confusing what we see happening in the world where bad people prosper and good people suffer. And he says that's going to remain confusing. But under the sun, S-U-N, there's no right answer. But under the S-O-N, we know that ultimately God's justice will prevail and that all wrongs will be set right. Verse 14 and 15 of 8 talks about, life's mysteries and how really for the fourth time he mentions about eat, drink, and be merry. He's again not saying that that's hedonism and we should live for food and live for drink and live for joy. But these are gifts from God, and our ability to enjoy it is in itself a gift. We're to receive those blessings gratefully and to not despair, but trust God. That gives you again a comparison between hedonism, which is pleasure is life's purpose, enjoy life because tomorrow we die. Possessions are going to create happiness, and the gift itself is what's ultimate. We know, of course, that Ecclesiastes teaches that God is life's purchase, and that we can only enjoy because it is God's gift. And God grants us the ability to enjoy possessions, but it's the giver that is ultimate, not the gift. So we counter what the world seems to articulate. There's a term called common grace, which is God gives good things to everybody: food, friendship, work, marriage, beauty, rest. Doesn't matter what kind of person you are. Hitler had food. Hitler had people who were his friends. He had a job. He had a relationship. He enjoyed the beauty of the earth and he was given opportunities to rest. But it was not God's particular grace that he gives to those that he forgives sins. And it's those gifts that are never to be idolized or rejected. So, we're not of the type of Christian who doesn't dance, doesn't play cards, doesn't drink. There's people who, again, have wrongheadedly interpreted certain restrictions to say, well, any pleasure can be then bad if we're concerned that we're going to be confused that having pleasure is the ultimate good. He comments, as you can see him postulating here, looking off to the stars, that there are limits of human understanding. God's ways will always exceed our understanding. Even with all the wisdom he enjoyed, his investigation still had limits, and that things like the mystery or the purpose of life may always remain a mystery. And again, this is in the world under the sun without the insight that the Messiah, Jesus, has told us about what life's purpose is, which is from our study of the Westminster Catechism, we know is to enjoy God forever. We move to chapter 9, that while despite we face death, we could still live well. Death is going to come for all, but it's a joy that we recognize that joy itself is God's gift, and that wisdom in the face of all that we have is still better than folly. Here's a ominous photo of image of the death just hovering over. So it doesn't matter all the wealth that he has, death is still coming for him. It affects everyone. So its life is so precious. Uh, we have time only when we're living to prepare for death. When we're dead, it's too late. And actually witnessing the mortality of others around us teaches us perspective. So it's a good experience to be exposed to the fact that life does come to an end. Is why you don't want to live in a community of a bunch of 30-year-olds. It's good to be living with young people, old people, and see all facets of life. Here's a little AI image of Solomon enjoying a little simple play of, ball with his son. This is the good things. Receive blessings. Relationships are what's valuable. Work hard, live purposely, and while you are alive, act on the opportunities before you to enjoy that life. So he's saying, if there is no purpose in life, if there is no greater meaning in life, at least enjoy the opportunities you have as a gift from God. He stresses in later verses of chapter 9 about life's uncertainties, that even if you're strong, success is not guaranteed. Circumstances are going to surprise us, like a bird or a fish caught in a net, and our ability to control it is quite limited. And in fact, random things affect everybody. In a contest between strength and wisdom, he's saying, I'll take wisdom. And he shown here giving the award to the wise over the contest of the strong. He talks about how, a simple man with wisdom can save an entire city. But even when they save that city, they're not remembered, they're not recognized, they're not heralded much beyond their death. So again, it's back to that sadness associated with no purpose beyond the life we have here. And he says all that wisdom can be screwed up by just the acts of one bad person. All right. That's it for our recording. Talk to you next week.